everybody, welcome back to my channel, and welcome to my July reading vlog. You're currently sitting on a box of kitty litter, so enjoy that. At the present moment, I am reading 3 books. I'm reading an ebook, a physical book, and an audiobook. Don't ask, I've just been wild and it's only 2 days into the month. So for my physical copy, I am currently reading a book off of my 100 Epic Reads of a Lifetime poster, and that's The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. Now, for the month, I'm only reading the Fellowship of the Ring because you can't make me read the entire trilogy. The poster is way too vague about what I'm supposed to read. It usually just says which book to read. Like, for example, one series says that it just needs to be the first book. But this one, all it says is The Lord of the Rings, so I'm just reading The Fellowship of the Ring. I am 60-something pages into it, and so far, so good. This one is unabridged, though, so I'm getting absolutely everything J.R.R. Tolkien wrote about the universe, and it's a lot of mumbo-jumbo that I don't really care about. I'm just more focused on Frodo as he's figuring out what the ring is and what he has to do with it. That's, of course, the more exciting part, not all the Hobbit ancestry. Next, I am reading an ebook, and that is A Stitch in Time by Kelley Armstrong. It's this sort of gothic book about a modern-day woman going back to a house her aunt had since she inherited it, and she is interacting with a sort of ghost from her past, which turns out to be a time portal in her house that is taking her back to a different century and meeting a real-life historical guy, and they kind of have a romance. I thought that was an interesting premise, and I do like the author, so I thought I would seek out this different sort of story than her usual fare that I read. I believe I'm like 40% of the way through that book, and so far it's very light, very nice, and it's fine. And the audiobook I started today, it's Dracula's Child by J.S. Barnes. It is a recently published book. It is sort of just the events that happened after Dracula, which is a genre that I particularly enjoy. And the premise seems to be that there is this huge societal buildup to Dracula's return in some form. It seems to be a rebirth of sorts, but the whole society is starting to just, be encapsulated in shadow and darkness, and the main core cast from the original Dracula novel is starting to feel things. Things are starting to connect. I'm only about 29% of the way through it, and so far I am really enjoying it because the writing style of their dialogue and the writing style of the journals, since it's an epistolary novel, is excellent. It feels realistic to the time period. It doesn't feel too mumbo-jumbo-y, when some people write historically, it doesn't sound right off the tongue. The narrators of this novel are doing an excellent job smoothly reading that. It sounds like people actually talking from that time period. The time period is currently about 1914, and it is just an excellently written book so far, like dialogue-wise, description-wise, plot-wise. That remains to be seen since I'm only a little bit of the way through it, but so far I'm enjoying the build-up. I'm really enjoying the writing. It sounds very natural to the time period, which is something that I hardly ever feel. So excellent reading month so far, and I'm only a few days into the month, so stay tuned for my updates on these reads. It's been a few days. I haven't really been able to read much because the store I work at is moving locations, and I've been working a lot to help with the move. I actually worked more in the past 11 days than I did during the entire month of June, so I finished The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien, but I'll be talking more about that in the 100 Epic Reads reading blog. And today I finished Dracula's Child by J.S. Barnes. I think for that book I'm going to give it 4 stars, maybe 3.5, because, as I said earlier, it was an incredibly well-written book, like writing-wise, like descriptions and storytelling and language-wise. It was perfect for the time period. It was great. I wasn't brought out of it by like a stupid turn of phrase or something like that. It was really well written. The story, the plot, however, has a little bit to be desired. It is sort of a simple plot, but it's an easy to get into plot, and it is well developed in itself for what it is. If I were to compare it to another book, It kind of gives the same energy as Anno Dracula by Kim Newman. It's almost like he wanted to write the book in between the end of Dracula and the beginning of Anno Dracula, because you go right into Anno Dracula with Dracula ruling all of England and turning everybody into like vampires and beasts and stuff. He does get defeated at the end of this one, so it isn't directly a lead-in into the events of Anno Dracula, but it's sort of the same vibe to me, and that's good enough, I suppose. The new characters weren't that interesting, but they did bring something new to the story. I liked the way that Quincy was developed. The ending seemed a little bit rushed. It didn't seem to have a full impact that a book should, but if that's one of the only criticisms, this is a very good Dracula sequel. I have read quite a lot in my day, and there have been a few that have been very bad. So to call this one pretty good or middling is an excellent addition to all of this weird stuff people write in the Dracula sequels. And once again, I cannot recommend the audiobook enough. I think that the two narrators did a fantastic job, and they really added to the way that the story was so well done, especially since it's epistolary. It feels more fantastic to just listen to them read their journal entry rather than reading it. I really, really liked it. And at the moment, I am also reading Out of Bondage by Linda Lovelace, which is a sequel memoir to her original memoir, Ordeal, which discussed her very abusive marriage to a man who forced her into pornography. This sequel memoir is about trying to get out of the life that that horrible abusive marriage put her in. She was put into a lot of debt, a lot of embarrassment, a lot of potential further abuse by other people, and her relationship with her husband as it developed, as he struggled to understand what exactly she went through. So far, it's a lot easier to read than Ordeal. Ordeal contains a lot of intensely dark situations, and this one alludes to them and draws back to what she originally said in the previous book, but it's a lot easier to handle. But you would not be able to read this book without first reading Ordeal, in my opinion. But it is so far very well done. I'm about 1/4 through it. So that's my update for now. I hope to read a couple more books this month. I don't know when the store will be finished moving, so I'll have to wait until then. Hello. In the time since I last spoke to you, I started and finished 2 books. I also successfully assisted in moving my store's location, so hopefully that's going to be stopping now and I will have more time to finish out all of my reading for the month. So the first book that I started and finished was One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. That is their sophomore novel. It's about the girl who meets this other girl on a subway and figures out that she's from the 1970s and she's stuck in this weird time loop where she can only exist on the subway train. And they develop a romance and find a way to figure out if they can get her off of this train or what they're capable of doing to be together. Now, I'm only giving the book 3 stars. It was good, it was light, it was fine. I really enjoyed all of the characters, the side characters. They were very, very well developed. But I found that the problem with the novel was a lack of good premise and plot. For their debut novel, Red, White, and Royal Blue, the premise itself was already something that drew me in. It was the president's son and the King of England's son having a relationship. That is a very interesting premise, whether you like the characters or not. That is just a good hook for a romance, a good hook for a new adult novel. This novel had a lot going for it. There was a lot of detail, a lot of personality, but the hook of it didn't draw me in. The premise was just fine. I wasn't looking forward to what was going to happen. I was just sort of reading the book and sort of figuring out, hey, I know how this is going to end. So it wasn't my favorite book I've ever read, but I would recommend it. It's good. The romance is okay. Another thing that greatly icked me out was they do it on a subway train. Yes, it is a closed subway train, the lights are off and it's the morning, so no one's there. But hygiene? Ugh. Yep, so I started and finished that. That was a very, very quick read. And the other book that I finished recently was I listened to the audiobook of Open Book by Jessica Simpson. Open Book is her memoir where she discusses her career, her bodily issues, her first marriage to Nick, her career, and ultimately her descent into alcoholism, and then her struggles to gain back herself while also starting her family with her new husband. I have vaguely heard about Jessica Simpson my entire life. I saw a bit of Newlyweds. I saw the media's obsession with her and her weight. I knew a little bit of her music. I mostly knew her as Daisy Duke from the Dukes of Hazzard movie, and getting to know her through her memoir was incredible. She narrated her own memoir, and she went through a lot of very, very emotional moments in her life, and as she was reading them, you could actually hear her getting choked up. So it was a very, very emotional read. As I was listening to it, I felt myself getting moved emotionally by her words, and it was just a very good memoir. It wasn't preachy, which is something, you know, from a preacher's daughter is very, very good, because I didn't feel like I was being talked down to and that the whole book was just, look at me, I'm a celebrity, listen to me, little people. She seems very humble, she seems like a pretty good person, and I enjoyed her memoir. So that's my update for now. I am also currently reading Hollywood Gothic, there's a longer subtitle, by David J. Skal, which is a nonfiction book about the process of Dracula from novel to eventual screen giant. So far it's pretty simple, it's pretty baby's first descent into Dracula scholarly literature, and so far there's not a lot that I didn't already know, but I may recommend it as a first venture into that topic if you are interested. I will let you know later, so that's my update for now. Okay, it's wrap-up time once again. So this month I read 7 books, and I think I'm giving them all 3 stars, except for one, which is 3.5, so not a great month. I read The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien, the first book in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, because I'm not reading the entire trilogy for my poster. This was for my 100 Epic Reads of a Lifetime poster. I only gave it 3 stars. I really enjoyed the characters, but the world building was a little bit lost on me, and I do prefer the films. You'll hear more about this in my vlog coming very soon. Next, I read A Stitch in Time by Kelley Armstrong, which is a gothic time travel romance story. Also gave that 3 stars. There's not a lot to say about it. It is just exactly what it is. It was light, it was easy, it was well written. It was just fine. I didn't really care about the romance that much, but I find that that's a trend in a lot of romance books. If the characters in the relationship don't hook me right away, I usually don't care whether they have a happy ending or not. But it was a simple enough book, a really light romance. I listened to the audiobook of Dracula's Child by J.S. Barnes, and I'm giving that one 3.5, maybe 4 stars. I really enjoyed the writing of it. I really enjoyed the narration of it. It was an epistolary novel set in its historical time period, and the writing seemed very accurate to the time period. I really enjoyed all the choices that the characters from the original novels went through. Some of the new characters were a bit iffy. I didn't really connect to them as much, but that wasn't the point. The plot was very, very simple, but it wasn't horrendous, which is normal in a Dracula sequel. It was a light plot, an easy plot, and one that sort of streamlined through normally, and I enjoyed it. It is one of the better Dracula sequels that I have ever read. I then read Out of Bondage by Linda Lovelace, a sequel memoir to her original memoir Ordeal. This one based more on the aftermath of her ordeal, settling into her new life with her husband and dealing with the finances and consequences of dealing with what she dealt with in her previous book. And it was an easier read. It was still very compelling, but I only gave it 3 stars. I enjoyed it well enough, but it does still contain a lot of darkness in it. Next, I read One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston, giving this one 3 stars. It just didn't hook me with the premise and the plot. The characters were fine and I enjoyed their arc, but I just didn't care what they were doing and if they ended up together. Like, the premise is very unique and very cool, but I just didn't connect to it as much as I connected to the author's first novel. I then listened to the audiobook of Open Book by Jessica Simpson, narrated by her, giving that one 3 stars. I enjoyed the process of listening to it. I found her life and her struggles and the way that she dealt with everything very interesting. I hardly knew her before her memoir, and now I know her a little bit better. And yeah, I think it was a solid memoir. It didn't feel too preachy, and I enjoyed it. And then I closed out my month by reading Hollywood Gothic by David J. Skal, giving this one 3 stars as well. I just found all the information in this book to be very, very basic. I already knew the entire story of Florence Stoker suing over Nosferatu, trying to get the playwrights to be put into film rights, and all the subsequent details about shooting Dracula and shooting the subsequent film also Dracula related, like the one that they filmed during the nighttime. So while all of that is very interesting stuff, I already knew about it, and I didn't like all the details of like court cases and Hollywood execs and casting and just boring finance stuff. I was interested in all the details about the life of Bela Lugosi and about the filming and subsequent attempt to destroy the film Nosferatu, which I think is just a beautiful and interesting film, and I am glad it is not lost. Florence, I understand you were in troubling financial times, but come on. It's just funny to me that so much of Dracula is connected to copyright infringement, suing, etc. There's a lot of that in this book. And I just think that it's very, very funny because it's all very vampiric in itself. All of this court stuff, lawyer stuff, copyright stuff. Very ironic. And that's it. That was my month of July. I had a very, very busy month, but I am glad that I managed to get a lot of reading done. Thank you so, so much for watching. Check out my next video, which is me finally finishing my 100 Epic Reads of a Lifetime poster for the quarter. I only read 4 books, didn't finish the poster. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.